Hello, welcome to another one of our videos, and today we're going to be discussing some health and fitness facts specific to women. And to start it off, here's a great quote. So without regular intentional exercise, the process of strength and muscle loss can begin in women as early as their 20s and 30s. And as you'll see throughout this video, this is going to be a real big link to a lot of the problems that many women face. Alright, so let's get into it. So firstly, while it's difficult for nearly all of us, male, female, doesn't really matter who you are, or young, old, to get in great shape, it's fair to say the female population has a much more difficult road to take. Mainly, this is mainly due to the complex hormonal system, but also the anatomical structure that's prone to like hypermobility or excessive laxity in the joints, exposes the body to poor instability that can lead to joint problems. And to basically just inefficient movement. So where it's really difficult to enjoy exercise and sports and fitness activities because your body's just not really moving as well as it should, and injury is very, very likely. All right, so one of the other real big factors among the female population is this constant body shaming, and in recent years the Instagram and Facebook explosion on social media's seen like all this selfie stuff and the fitspiration things and constant comparisons and believing that smaller is better and to do it at any cost, and basically just turning women off of getting fit in the first place. So the fat shaming, that if you're watching this video, this is nothing new to you. A lot of people have heard this, seen this before. Well, I agree people need to lose weight. I don't think that's helping them by doing things like that are put on this page here. That's not going to help anyone. That's just going to make them do the exact opposite and really destroy their intentions to become healthy. So a big thing that I often see, and this isn't limited to women, this is for males as well, is just where people are exercising for the wrong reason. They're exercising. Years ago it was to look good in a mirror. Now it's to look good on Instagram and Facebook. And they will often do this at any price, or just to get their six-pack, or to be as thin as possible to look good to their friends, or just to get more likes and on their social media page. So research shows that Instagram use is strongly linked to self-objectification, which means that the more women view fitspiration images on Instagram, the more likely they base their self-worth and happiness on how they look. So this is where they begin to take drastic measures that severely compromise their health, like constantly looking at the scales, like in this case, and thinking I'm fat when they're not fat, and and trying anything they can to get smaller, and chasing elusive, unrealistic goals to look good, even at the expense of their health. And this is when they believe that when they get to that elusive look, that they'll be much happier, and they begin to treat exercise as a punishment, look at food as the enemy, and constantly looking to lose as many calories as possible. Their choice of exercise is not based on what their body needs, but what they think will make them look skinny. And same with their food. They're not really worried about if it's got good nutrients or what it's meant to do for them, or how much they should be eating. As long as it makes them shrink, it's all good. So, and that is not healthy at all. I've met many people with six-packs who were some of the unhealthiest people I've ever met, and they were in constant pain and suffering all the time. A great book you can read where a lady describes this exact journey that she was on, that nearly ruined her life. You really sort of can open your mind up to the damage of treating exercise as punishment. So good little infograph here that's sort of saying exactly that. So stop treating exercise as punishment. It's really a privilege to be able to exercise. There's a lot of people that want to that can't because of things. So we really should begin to use exercise to improve how we feel, not just to improve how we look. So what should women focus on? So, well, there's several things that really need to know about, and I'm going to go into a little bit more detail. You can read this on the screen here, but there's a lot of problems with, like we discussed at the start, the joint laxity and anatomy, biomechanics, that you can't change them, right? And there's nothing wrong with it. It just means that it exposes the body to a little bit more problems, and arthritis, osteoarthritis, that'll come later on, even if you didn't get injury, are much more severe in women. Osteoporosis and things like that as well. So a lot of pains in the lower back after pregnancy and issues, and that could have been prevented if a strengthening program was put in place. Getting the correct balance with the food to balance the hormonal system, that's much more complicated than a male. That can really set off a lot of problems. When hormones are out of control, and you'll see this later, they really start to create a stack of stuff. Fibromyalgia or migraines and headaches, they're much more common in females. And again, it's linked to all of these things that we're discussing: anatomy, hormones, all the things that men don't really have as great a difficulty to deal with, right? Heart disease, we all know it's a big killer of everyone, but it's actually very high in women. And since 1984, the number of deaths for women has exceeded those for men, and that's something that a lot of people are not aware of. Most people think it's because men die earlier, but as you'll see later on, there's a lot of factors for that. But this is a real issue with women. As you can see at the top here, it's the number one killer of women. So this is something that we really need to keep in mind, and it's not just old age and bad luck. It's that there's things that you can do to really try to prevent this early onset or loss of quality of life. So top 5 health concerns, there's a lot of them, really it's hard to say which one's more important than other, but I put down here breast cancer, knee injuries, especially ACL tears, heart disease, osteoporosis, autoimmune disorders. They're really big problems amongst the female population that puts them at much greater risk than males. All right, so let's have a look at some of these in greater detail. So there's a number of problems that we see with women. I'm just going to skip that slide on osteoporosis, and I'm going to go straight to the strength training. So can't say it enough. Along with eating quality nutrition, the value of adding muscle to women's body is far and away the most important ingredient for optimal health, apart from probably eating well and reducing stress. Those two things would completely derail you even if you were strength training. But in terms of exercise, if you're just walking or just doing something like yoga and that, it's nowhere near as beneficial to you as trying to implement a strength training program 3 times a week. So several of the risk factors that were listed in those infographics could easily be controlled and even eliminated from implementing this, as long as stress and diet is under control. So the muscles are more important than what your BMI or your being thin. All right, so research shows that the muscles are more indicative of your overall health than you just being thin or your low BMI, and drastically reduces those health risks. So the greater the muscle mass you have, the better. So the only way to get that is with regular exercise and applying resistance exercise. If you're doing just cardio stuff, yoga, even light Pilates and stuff, it's not going to be developing muscle mass in the way that you need it to be. So when you're doing that and you're combining it with dieting, when you're doing things that are not helping you, the consequence to your health is immense. So if you're doing excessive cardio and eating poorly, constantly you are drastically reducing your muscle mass, now increasing your health risks that are just around the corner for you. Now, we've spoken a fair bit about the hormonal system and the damage that this creates to the female. Now, obviously we can't change this, and you wouldn't want to change it. And they're good, and there's no bad hormones. There's just hormones that get out of balance. So basically they control everything from what we feel, such as hunger, thirst, tired, sick, energy, hot, cold. You've got all your sex hormones, you've got your stress hormones. They're basically like your body's messengers, and they're produced in one area of the body, such as the thyroid, pass into your bloodstream, where they get sent to organs and tissues to modify structures and functions. So, like as I said before, there's no good or bad hormones, there's only hormones that are out of balance. And if there's an imbalance that's left unchecked, it starts to create a huge chain reaction of problems, because one hormone's doing excessive amounts of work and it's suppressing its opposing hormone. All right, so So for example, cortisol as a stress hormone is going to suppress your sleep hormone of melatonin and your feel-good hormones. All right, so you're going to have a constant overproduction of stress symptoms and a reduction on the anabolic build and repair ones. So how do you control hormones? Well, it's very complicated. Probably I won't have time to go into a great deal of that, but basically eating quality food, getting good sleep, controlling your stress and exercise. They're really, if you've just nutted it down to simply just that is obviously you might have to go into a little bit more detail in terms of the exact food. If you've got like food intolerances and things like that, you need to drill down a little bit closer. But if you're eating quality food and avoiding processed food, sugars, avoiding sort of extreme dieting and stuff as well, this is where you really screw up your hormonal system doing that. And the exercise, again, the exercise of choice is strength training. And why? Because muscle is one of the best natural methods for balancing your hormones, because the extra muscle mass increases your production of the human growth hormone. And in females it's much less than males because they have much less muscle mass to begin with. And the muscles of people who regularly lift weights will absorb blood sugar in response to insulin much more effectively than those who don't. And this is so insulin is really linked to diabetes and metabolic syndrome and all these issues that we see that end up with becoming diseases. All right, so insulin is a hormone that needs to be controlled. Someone's telling me that they think strength training is dangerous. Well, I would say when being weak is dangerous. So especially for females, really strength gyms should be crowded with females, probably more older females than younger, but should be more females than males. Coming back to osteoporosis, which I skipped over quickly before, women are more likely to develop this than men, mainly again due to their lack of muscle mass, so their bones begin to soften and bend, and combined with their complex hormonal system, it starts to really disrupt things. And women who've gone through menopause, so that's a hormonal thing, that they'll suffer more so than males. The higher risk of osteoporosis, so the body can no longer absorb the calcium as well as it did when they were younger. And you can see it from this chart here, just the prevalence of osteoporosis by age and sex, and the females are in the green versus the males. You can see it's like significantly greater percentage. It leads to an onset of a great deal of problems. All right. Again, bone density, which is very much linked to that. Decreased bone density when bones lose minerals such as calcium faster than the body can replace them. Now you've got trouble. All right. And as a result, they, like we said before, that's the beginning of osteoporosis. See dowagers, humps, and all these sort of things. Basically, like gravity starting to compress the bones of the spine, and with this comes an increased risk of falls. So. And as you can see here, women 3 times more likely to develop it, and significant progressive losses after the age of 50. So that's why I said before, there should be gyms crowded with older females lifting weights. About headaches, migraines and neck pain, well, statistics show the prevalence of these is again much greater in women than men. Why is this? Well, no definitive one thing, because there's a lot of things that are linked to this. But again, the muscle mass comes into it, as does that hormonal system. But you can see here in terms of shoulder pain prevalence, again, females are almost double males, especially like in these younger age groups as well. So it's significantly greater, but across the board, it's much greater. So very unstable joint, the shoulder joint, and this is where we see things like scapular winging. So postural problems are much more common in women than men. This leads to a host of problems that either present as a shoulder injury or as a neck problem. This scapular winging we'll always see linking with neck pain. All right. So, and obviously we know neck pain can lead to migraines and can lead to all sorts of trouble. All right. So again, just learning how to strengthen and stabilize this joint is paramount. If you don't do that, you're really exposing yourself to more trouble. So. Another thing to keep in mind with women, they tend to have longer hair, which makes their head weigh more. You wouldn't think it weighs more, but it really does, and you would know that if you've ever had long hair and then cut it off, and you just how much different that your head feels without that extra weight. Combining that with poor posture from this text neck and poor positions that not just females, everyone's evolved into over the recent years, this really compounds. So if you're beginning with a weak muscle mass, you've got postural winging. Now you're doing this texting neck, that's what they sort of call it. Then you've got mental stress added on it, maybe the body shaming. You've got like a constant barrage on all of the muscles around the shoulders and the neck. You're inevitably going to create the perfect storm for a lifetime of pain in that area, coupled with instability and weakness. You endlessly have trigger points you're trying to get rid of, but the underlying problem is poor posture from lack of strength and poor understanding of movement and how to preserve that posture and where it should be. All right, so again, all of this could happen in males, but it's way more prevalent in females just because you're starting with less muscle mass to begin with, and that hormonal system can really disrupt things. All right, so you've got every cycle you're going through that, and then when it's in menopause, it sort of completely disrupts everything all over again. All right, so it's quite unfair, really, but that's just the nature of that system. TMJ and headaches, this is jaw pain. TMJ is temporomandibular joint. So this is another very common painful area, and again, 3 to 9 times more common in females than males. So males are just affected by stress as much as females, but tend to not suffer from this disorder as much as them. And again, the jaw pain can really lead to chronic migraines and headaches. So it's no surprise that this can happen. Again, like this is quite a difficult concept. Lot of stress and clenching of the jaw and all these sort of things are associated with this, and there's a video on their YouTube channel specifically about this if you want to look at it into more. But a lot of the things that we discussed in that, again, come back to postural things that we just spoke about a minute ago with the neck and the shoulder. Another good quote for you: muscle imbalance in today's society is compounded by stress, fatigue, and insufficient movement through regular physical activity, as well as the lack of variety of movement. That's by Dr. Vladimir Yanda. So a really good quote to keep in mind about the value of exercise if you're not sure if you really need to do it. Now we've looked at the neck and the shoulder and the jaw, but what about the knee? Well, the ACL injuries in female sports is massive, and especially over the last 5 to 10 years as the female participation has exploded. So as more and more women are playing, the rise in more and more sports injuries, and in particular this one is much, much higher. So this is nothing new in terms of like being higher than males. Is for a long time we've known this. It's just that we're seeing more and more of it because there's more women playing. But as you can see from these statistics here, the highest point is like the younger females. You can see that's just like way higher than males ever get to, even though there's more males playing sports. So the males are pretty high here, but that's just the fact that there's so many more playing them. I would say that this would actually be a lot higher now with more females playing, but this age group here is really high at risk, the younger females, and it's not bad luck. It comes down to a lot of the things that we've already spoken about, because when you consider these injuries most of the time they're not collision injuries. So over 3/4 of them are non-contact, meaning they're caused from a poor cutting move or a pivot or landing poorly. So cutting move is what this girl's just about to do when she plants this foot to then do a crossover move and change direction. This is exactly the position where we'd see this injury occur, and this is what it looks like when there's a torn ACL ligament. But so what are the reasons that females are more at risk? Well, there's quite a lot of them. Poor neuromuscular control, that's basically means poor movement. So poor, you can see this is poor excessive pronation, poor hip internal rotation, just basically uncoordinated. The anatomy, the wide pelvis with a greater Q angle. Q angle is quadricep angle, so it sort of heads inwards on quite a steep angle. Again, you can't change that. That's just the female anatomy. It means that we just have to work with it and really manage the problem, or no, it's not a problem. Manage the alignment as best we can by strengthening the joints. The quadriceps to hamstring ratio, there's a real imbalance here where the women tend to favour the quadriceps over the hamstrings. Part of that is because there's extra laxity within the hamstring itself, and there's extra joint laxity on top of that, and all the reason for the extra laxity is so that they would be able to give birth when they're pregnant. If they were not as flexible, if they had the stiffness of a male, they would probably die from trying to give birth, or they wouldn't even be able to give birth. They need to, and girls who've been pregnant would know that they have flooded with the relaxin hormone during the pregnant stage to make them even more flexible than they already are. So you can see how all of these things are real issues for joint stability, really expose the knee to a horrible, if there's no strength and poor neuromuscular control, it's just like stacking upon itself multiple reasons for that joint to be blown to pieces. Even when girls are doing strength programs, they're poorly designed and not about moving well, they're just about trying to look good in the mirror, or just not understanding movement. And this is where I put here ignorance to moving well and ignorance to cutting and running techniques. And from sporting clubs, they really have no idea about what any of this even is supposed to look like, yet alone being able to implement it. And I think this is a real lack of education among the sporting community, where they really need to teach this as much as the skills of the game, especially for the girls, because it's more important than ever, because this injury is a season-ending injury. It could even be career-ending. All right, so the need to strengthen is paramount. Now, as heart disease, cancer, diabetes, we've sort of quickly touched on it, but as we said earlier, there's more women died of heart disease than men each year, and it's more deadly than all forms of cancer combined, partly because women are living longer, but however, as they may be living longer, their quality of life is greatly compromised because they're living with these diseases that are really impairing their quality of life. All right, so it's something that's not only affecting older women, as it can affect women of all ages. So even for younger women, the combination of birth control pills and smoking boosts their disease risk by over 20%. So while the risks do increase with age, things like overeating and being sedentary can really cause the plaque to accumulate in the arteries, and that becomes a huge risk later in life. So again, coming back to exercise, what do you need to do? Well, there's, like you can do cardio, but it really comes down to the strength training. And again, why, if it's so important for us to implement it, why are so many women still avoiding it? Well, as we went back to the beginning, the fear of getting big. So there's the body shaming thing, but there's still this thing in so many girls' mind, they're going to get big like a guy. This is near impossible for women to do. All right, they just simply do not have enough testosterone to be able to do that, and that is the single most important ingredient that you need to have to be able to do that. The other thing you need to do is you need to eat a considerable amount of food. Even guys, to put size on, it's not easy to do. You have to eat massive quantities of food. You need the extra mass to do it, and without that, you're never going to get that extra muscle size. All right, so most of the girls who lift bigger weights actually start to shrink, if anything, not get bigger. All right, even though they're getting stronger, their muscles do not develop that huge hypertrophy that the blokes would have, say, as you see in this picture. All right, so they just, as you can read through this slide, I put a few things on here that you can read about, but yeah, it's just get it through. You just understand that it's near impossible for a girl to do that. So, in my opinion, most women need to be tightened up, not loosened up. So, this is coming back to that laxity thing. In the mobility assessments that I do, it's very rare to find a female who fails all the tests, and it's very common for me to find males who do fail all the tests. Yet with the strength and stability things, it's almost the exact opposite, 90% failure rate, especially with the pelvic and shoulder stability assessments in the females. They just really struggle in this department, yet we're seeing so many women spending time with yoga and trying to do strength training as Pilates, which is not, I'm not bagging Pilates, but this is not true strength training at all. This is not really going to change a hell of a lot in terms of your overall muscle mass. Might have some things that are okay, but they're really learning to do things standing up. Again, I think a lot of women are doing this just from clever marketing, and that tells them they can tone and they won't get big. Toning is just a different way of saying getting stronger, but you can't make muscles longer and leaner with strength. They don't. Exercise modality doesn't determine how the muscles react. So another reason why women maybe don't participate in exercise is they simply hate it. They just don't, especially weight training, they just don't enjoy it at all. Again, I think this comes back to the lack of education in the media. Really not telling women just how important it is, and I think if people knew this, they would start to really make some changes, just like how they can demonise food, so all saturated fat and this and that, and people start to avoid it because they're constantly bombarded with this message. I think the same thing could happen in a positive way with strength training, and it would really, you would start to see a big difference. But I don't know how to change the media's focus on stuff like that when half the people don't understand it themselves. But hopefully this video might help you to see things in a different way. There's a lot of stuff that I haven't covered, and exercise choices, all that sort of stuff. I've spoken a bit about ACL shoulders. These books, you can get these from my website. Some of them are free ones, and there's some of them that are more in-depth and detailed, and you can download some of the videos you can download as well. So go to the website and check the description of the video, and you'll find a ton of information there to help you. All right, so I hope this video is giving you some great insights into the reason for strength training for girls, and and it changes your life in some way, is a good thing. All right, I'll see you on our next video.